नहीं भैया इधर से
Okay, students, welcome to the second section for our workshop today. I'd like to introduce Rizvi to all of you all. If you all have been following NewsLab, then you already know Rizvi. So let me just give you a brief introduction. Rizvi is co-founder and creative director at NewsLab, a Mumbai-based design studio known for its thoughtful and expressive approach to architecture, interiors, and bespoke furniture. He studied architecture at Rachna Sansad Academy of Architecture and specialized in architecture design and digital manufacturing design at Georgia Tech. Huzefa and Jaseen, who is his partner in the firm. The co-founders of Newsland have won the ID Honors 2024 Residential Interior Awards and have also been appointed to the judging panel for the Rizvi Awards 2025. They've also been featured in the AD Top 100 list. Their work encompasses furniture collections and interior design projects that often showcase the impact of culture on design. In 2015, they established Muse, a unique online furniture store with pieces influenced by their global travels and architecture, where they explore contemporary design with a sprinkle of whimsy. Okay, with this, I'd like to invite Rizvi to show us some of his very exploratory and fun work that he's been working with, and also probably take us through his journey in his practice.
Sure.
Thanks,
Thanks. Hello. Hi. Hi, guys.
Hello.
So I believe all of you are students of architecture? Everyone here. Awesome. So what I'll do is that basically before I start the presentation, I just want to give a little bit of context which leads to this presentation, and my 1.5 years, my 1.5 hours here today, I'm going to divide into like 10 minutes of briefing, maybe a 40-minute presentation, and then we can have like a 15-20 minute conversation around it. First of all, thank you for having me here, right? And as she introduced, I did my undergrad at Dasna Sansar, and funnily enough, I wanted to be a chemical engineer. I had no clue that architecture exists as a profession. So I was one of those guys, who got into architecture because he was clueless. I just, happened to. So I got a good score in my PCM, right? And at that time, architecture ke science was very important, right? When that was a mandate. So I belong to that age. I'm a dinosaur. What happened was that I got admission in a college in New Bombay, and being the townie that I was like, "Yeah, मुझे इतना दूर नहीं जाना है." So then I was like, इसके लिए मैंने पूरा profession ही change कर दिया. So I happened to meet my mom's friend's daughter who was studying architecture at Dasna Sansar. Met her, saw what she was doing at that time. She was doing this really cool interiors portfolio, and those were the days where we didn't have like computers, right? I mean, we had, but not like CAD or इसके लिए नहीं था. So I just saw what she was doing, and I got really intrigued. I always enjoyed art, So I was like, okay, this looks like a good bet, and I can bet on myself. And that's how I just, sort of went to Rachna's. I had no idea perspective क्या होता है. तो जब aptitude test दिया, तो my perspectives were like axons, but it was fun. Like I think my good grade in science helped me, at least get admission to architecture school. And once that happened, I think I'm very, very competitive as a person also. So I just went all out and, did exceptionally well in my 5 years in undergrad. But what I realized in that was that the big mistake that I made was that I did not work during those 5 years. And I think that I was only into books and, only in terms of doing good in college. But I never realized, because, sometimes when you know that you are going to be an architect or a designer, so there is a certain path that you chart for yourself, right? That time there was no access to enough research and all, so there was no one to guide me. So I just kept slugging it out in college, but I wasn't really giving time to, working with different practices, or maybe like how today I'm sure you guys take a pottery class or bamboo workshop, and there is so much of that accessibility. So I did all that. I stepped out of college, worked for a year in a practice where, unfortunately, I was only in Photoshop for 1 year. So everyone teased me as Photo Baba, because that's all that I learned, and that was a very bad experience. But that then led me to joining another firm, and I don't recommend quitting firms in 1 year unless you're like really fried and frustrated. But I had to join another firm, worked there for a while, and then did my master's in the US in digital manufacturing. This was in Georgia Tech, and that was 2004 is when I joined the program, graduated in 2005, worked in Atlanta for a couple of years with a practice over there, came back to India in 2009, worked with Hafiz Contractor for 3 years as an associate, worked on a lot of large projects in both my practice in the US and with Hafiz Contractor. They were all high rises and large master plans. And I think that at 32, I was finally sure that now I want to start my practice. So today it's very different. People want to start their practice as soon as they get out of college. And I don't recommend that also, but that's a story for another day. But the thing is that when, what this experience did was that it actually gave me a very clear-cut platform to decide what I want to do with my life and with my career and with my choice of career. So thankfully, my best friend for now 20 years, Jason, was also in Bombay. And I think we both met one day and we were like, let's start. Let's do something together. So that's how we joined hands. We formed Muse Lab, and Muse Lab also had a very interesting journey, just in terms of how the name was devised, and that's very important. Like when you start on your own. So we were very clear that we didn't want to be like Studio Jassim and Huzaifa, because it would have been like a very long name. And Huzaifa Rangwala, Jassim Kirani, anyways the names sound too fancy for a lot of people. So we were like, okay, let's do something which is a little simpler, and that's how Muse Lab was coined. Muse because to muse is to think, but muse also means like a source of inspiration, and lab because a laboratory is where people make mistakes. There's a lot of research and development. So that's how we just combined these two words and Muse Lab was formed. Funnily, when we started Muse Lab, the first thing that we did was we went to Sri Lanka with a bunch of friends. And we spent like 3 weeks over there exploring Geoffrey Bawa's work and going to see Anjali work. And it was really nice. I mean, when our parents were like, मतलब कि ये लोग का तो practice घाटे में जाएगा because शुरू नहीं हुआ है काम करने के लिए, they've already gone out, like traveling and spending money and whatnot. But I think that in some way these experiences of when you travel really help you set up a lot of things. So what I'm going to show today, just as a conversation is that when Jassim and I started our practice, we both are architects in terms of graduation, right? But we are very clear that we did not want to limit ourselves to just architecture, because the crux of architecture is design, right? And design is anything. You can design policies, you can design like a poster, you can design in terms of interiors, in terms of landscape, you can design a software or an app, correct? So what is design? Design is a creative way to solve problems, and I'm sure that you have heard of that several times, right? So I think what we decided is that we didn't want to, because we worked for almost 10 years with different people, that experience of course taught us a lot, but it also gave us a lot of insight in terms of कि हमें क्या नहीं करना है, right? A lot of times when you practice, you know what you're going to do and you learn, and of course, a lot of respect and admiration for all the people that I worked with. But it also clearly taught me that this is what I don't want to do when I start my practice. And I think establishing that helped us understand कि हमें actually क्या करना है. So we then decided that okay, Muse Lab is not going to be an architecture studio. Muse Lab is going to be a design house, right? And today the reason I am showing you what I'm showing you is because in the past 14 years we have done everything from like 200-acre master plans to designing a tiny coaster. So literally everything in between that we've explored. Like whether it's public toilet prototypes, whether it's like installations with Chanapatna artisans, whether it's designing lights or wash basins, or like a clinic for cancer patients. Whether it's basically doing a mall, a public school, a school, which is a rural school. And I think that what is exciting about design only is that you can do anything, right? And it doesn't limit. So every day you are coming and you are trying to solve a new challenge. And I think that is why we sustained ourselves, which is why when you look at our work also, you will see that no two projects are alike. So because of that, we are able to constantly reinvent what we are doing and constantly get challenged, and that is what is exciting to come to work every day, right? I mean, I'm sure, I've been to college, and the first year in college, where when I went and we had, I think, what is it called? It was called a sciography class, or it was called, where we had to just like make lines. And every day I would go home and my mom would be like, what have you done? I said, I was just drawing lines all day, right? And for 2 weeks I was just doing that. But that became the foundation of everything that I can do in terms of sketching, So 2 weeks my mom was like, ये तो गया, मतलब कुछ तो गलत ही कर दिया. So essentially, these small things really sort of help with the foundation. I'm going to start the presentation. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to take you guys to 42 different projects in quick, like 30-35 minutes. So it's going to be almost like a pecha-pocha format. The idea is for you all to understand what all is possible and the scales of projects that one can do as a design, as someone who is basically a designer. But also at the same time, it will give you clarity about, what all one can sort of, like explore in terms of scale, in terms of typologies, etc. Yeah, but I just wanted to do that in full screen. Okay, I got it. Okay. So, the first slide says that design is a very powerful tool that has the ability to empower and destroy. It is incomplete without diverse voices and also without diverse choices, right? So, the entire premise of today's presentation is diversity in design, which can be monumental but has to be inclusive and, of course, we all make mistakes. So, essentially, I'm going to take like 120 seconds or 2 minutes for a project. I hope I can meet that time, otherwise I'm going to bore you guys to death. And 21 projects in 42 minutes is what I'm looking at. So the first project that you see over here, now again, I'm going to talk about products and all because that's a larger conversation, but this says that, so this was basically a holiday pad in Alibag, which we designed for a bachelor. And the whole idea is that he wanted a project which looked like a glass box from Los Angeles. Extremely unsustainable, right? So had nothing to do with, meeting the tenets of sustainability. So it was a mistake for us. But at the end, when we go back and we reflect, we now know that this is something that we never going to create. Because it doesn't make sense to have so much glass in Alibag. But I think at the end of the day, it is also in some way meeting the client's brief and meeting the requirement of what they want, right? So this was meant to be like a 4-bedroom home, very, very sort of modern, very classical. And finally when I told him that glass and maintenance is going to be an issue, he said, no, that's okay. I'm going to give a lot of employment to the people in this village and they will come and they will help clean and they will make money. Okay, fine, that's your perspective. But it was interesting because this is what that project was, and here we did not only the architecture interior, but we also did a little bit of the landscape design. So it was quite a fun project in that sense. So from architecture, we are now looking at toys, right? So we designed toys as well. Now, when it comes to toys, now I don't know if you've heard of Channapatna as a craft, right? So Channapatna is basically, it's east of Bangalore, right? And this is like a cluster of artisans who use wood, and they create all this only using the lathe machine. So ये समझना बहुत जरूरी है कि वो craft का limitations क्या है, तब जाके आप कुछ design कर सकते हो. So these toys were actually designed during the lockdown, and as you all know, the lockdown, a lot of these craft clusters were badly impacted because there was no source of income for them, and they all work on daily wages. So what we did was that we basically worked with them to design these toys. So essentially, these are like gender-neutral, shape-shifting toys, where you can sort of, these are all the different parts, you can configure them and reconfigure them. So and the idea was to also create something, which kids can engage with and, they can play with. So, of course, then we started naming all the toys, because they were available in a color format and a black format. But the whole idea at that point in time was that these toys were designed not just to sell, but they were designed for a purpose, to uplift the artisans and give them at least some sort of financial help during the lockdown. And at the same time, these toys were also part of an installation and draw collaborative. So we designed these toys, and then everyone was like, okay, where did the Muse stripe come from? So these toys were called the Muse stripe. So then we created the Muse verse. And these 4 guys that you see in front, they're all the guardians of the Muse verse. So it's fun because imagine, like you're doing architecture, but you're also doing storytelling, you're creating toys, making it a lot more fun. And this is what, really makes you want to wake up and go to work every single day. So we created these toys, and then what we did on the right side, what you see, so that actually is a side table, okay? Or a side table ke upar, it's like a cloche, right? So you know the cloche, right? It's like a glass sort of a dome. Within that, and you cannot see it here, but you can see it on our website, we then worked with a miniature artist in Ahmedabad. He and his wife worked with us to create these universes within the cloches. So that character that you see over there is this guy over here, and this character is the explorer, okay? So all these guys are not gender neutral, so they're all they right now, okay? So the explorer is over there, but like there was such interesting details within that cloche, and of course we still have them. But it was a really, really fun exercise. And then we started, like creating more of this. So you can see the details over here, right? So that's basically the ruler in between. On the left is the mystic, and then the guardian is right over there. So it was a very interesting exercise in designing toys, creating these universes with the help of an artist, collaborating with them, to create these cloches, and then also creating furniture pieces which can be used in a home. For those of you who know Mahim, so now we're talking about urban design, okay? So Mahim Junction is really, really sort of crazy. We all know that, right? So what we did was, this was like, so at News Lab, we also take up a lot of passion projects, right? Where it's not funded by the government or by a private client. It's just something that we like to do because we want to constantly keep ourselves, very sort of academic in our approach to design. So these are projects that we take up, and this is where we sort of did a full 1-year study on Mahim Junction, understanding traffic, doing traffic analysis, and what all works and what doesn't work. And this is what our proposal was, went to the BMC, and then they kind of didn't, like do anything about it. But I think it just helped that we did something to sort of, create a change that we think would work for the city. So it was very interesting because, when you look at Mahim Junction, it's crazy, right? I'm just going to go back one slide for those who want content. But of course, you've got the church on this side, there's the beach over there, the fisherman village on that side. There's this sort of road over here. This, of course, goes to South Bombay, this goes towards Bandra, and this goes towards Senapati Papat Mart. So it is actually at the nexus of this very, very sort of unique, diverse neighborhood. The Mahim fair happens, there is the church, that happens on Sunday, then there's the Friday prayers. But there is no sense of traffic, there is no sense of pedestrian crossing, and the intersection is nothing but chaos. And which is why we wanted to reintroduce this roundabout. So again, just to tell you guys, so the images that you see on the right, again the kind of illustrations that we created, which is very important to communicate an idea. So design is not just about creating something good, but it is also about maybe you might want to wake up the girl behind you. Hi. Yeah, no worries. Happens to the best. It's very interesting. If you pay attention, I think it might help you. Yeah. So what we did was that we kind of did this whole sort of exercise, and basically also worked on a lot of interesting things like if you walk Mahim, the sidewalks are really horrible and skewed. So we looked at sidewalk correction. We looked at like pedestrian crossings. And there was a very diligent effort to also look at, in Bombay we just drive like maniacs, right? We all are party to that. So how do we also create a system which also becomes like a benchmark for similar intersections within the city, and people can be a little bit more, I would say, sensitive to driving, to road crossing, to pedestrians, to elderly folks and whatnot. Now the fourth project over here, basically, we designed a rug, okay, a carpet. But now the inspiration, because also our heart and soul is in architecture, right? So second year architecture, first year architecture. My first site visit was, college graduate, so then we went to Ajanta Ellora Caves. So what we did was, this is like around, I think, during the lockdown again. Lockdown was some period like that, so like a lot of these cool passion projects came out. So we took the Ajanta cave, the plan of that, okay, we abstracted it. Now see the process. इसको abstract किया, we abstracted all the primary lines, we abstracted the stupa, this whole apsidal end, with the columns and all, mirrored it, okay, and then we kind of simplified it. So we call it as the Ajanta Plural series, and then this is the rug that was created based on that whole abstraction. So you can see how you can also take cues and inspiration from what you guys are doing in design, from things that you're learning in history, Indian history, foreign history, whatever it is, but you can apply 20 years later when you start your professional career, right? So nothing that you learn. So the reason to show this is that jo bhi seekh or what your faculty is teaching, your college is teaching, it's something that is always there in your subconscious, and somehow it will come in front of you and you can apply it in a very interesting way. So not only did we create the rugs, but we also then worked with a photographer, and we shot this in a quarry in Bhiwandi. So the whole idea was literally, like the whole process became full circle because the rugs were inspired by rock cut temples, right? We created them over here, and then we worked with a photographer who suspended these rugs on the quarry, and of course we got, a yoga instructor to just create the composition. So you see how design is not just limited to one thing. It cannot be a one-track thing. The minute you look right, left, front, back, you will see that there is a spectrum of things that are around you, and the opportunities are limitless. Interesting project in Coimbatore that we did. Basically, again, this is one of those massive homes. It's for a family of 4, like some 20,000 square feet home. In Bombay, we have like some 200 apartments in that. Anyways, this particular project, very interesting. Again, I want you guys to focus on the diagram. So there's a lot of effort given into even drawings, even at this stage. Architecture as a profession is like your deadline. Everything has to be done as of yesterday, right? But you still have to give yourselves time to create interesting graphics and interesting drawings that in some way become, a validation point for you also to hire a design team or here. Because representation is very important and in some way almost convinces clients. Now this over here, very interesting, they wanted a pool, so we designed a pool, but the whole pool was designed as a vault. So what you see over here is like a 75-foot vault. The entire underside is clad with tiles. So we cast the vault in custom sort of formwork, right? And then it was lined up with these beautiful tiles. Again, the idea being that, like when you're looking at creating an experience, it's not just about swimming. It's almost like you're creating like a grotto, and that becomes, part of the whole pool. So it's almost like a very 7-star experience but within the home. And these are just a few more images from the same home. Okay, interestingly, just a little backstory. Everyone's aware of Vastu Shastra, right? Okay. So Vastu, जब आप profession में आओगे ना तो आपको पता चलेगा that it's a lot of it is also backed by like superstition. Okay, people have forgotten the science of Vastu Shastra and people are diverted into superstition. अरे ये नहीं करोगे तो कोई मर जाएगा, right? So that basically becomes the crux of Vastu. But you need to understand the science of it. So this home is Vastu Shastra compliant, but it is also compliant to Manayadi Shastra. Now, Manayadi Shastra is basically, it's like the father of Vastu Shastra. Okay, so Tamil Brahmins believe in this whole thing. It's like a book where every room has to meet a certain dimension. And that's basically what. So this home is also based on the principles of Chettinad homes. So what I'm trying to project through this project is that you can design something which is very contemporary, which probably looks like a hacienda from the outside, but you can also layer it with something as rooted as a Chettinad home in the planning principles. These are posters that we designed on land. These are posters in birch ply. Okay, this is something that we started in 2015. The first project at New Smart. We took 1 year to design these posters. These are of course all laser cut. Now the idea of these posters, if you all know birch ply as a material, everyone is aware. So we use birch ply, and the idea was birch ply में क्या होता है ना, 4 mm का sheet होता है ना, तो it's only available in 5 feet by 5 feet. So we took a 5 feet by 5 feet sheet. Okay, all these posters are essentially 4 inches by 4 inches. We took those posters. The design was such that when you laser cut the sheet, there is no wastage. So these were the 4 posters. और ये जो part है ना, that is the part that is around the poster. You getting it? So that was used to create the tray. And the 5th poster became the lid, जिसके ऊपर the 4 designs were there inside. So you're getting it. So now when you look at this, it's like a box which has a lid with 4 posters inside. But there was zero wastage. And this is why it took us 1 year to get the right size, the right coating, to understand the limitations of the laser cutter. Because whenever you manufacture something, you have tools. You first have to understand what the tools cannot do to know what you can do with those tools. Make sense? And it's a very important life hack, especially when it comes to design. So, of course, we were excited, and then like 2 years back, we took these same designs and then we created these posters in stone, all in Indian stone. And as you can see, like we also pay a lot of attention to styling, so they're almost designed like these cookies. Correct? Very interesting home we've done in Patra. This home is, so Patra is this small town which is 40 kilometers east of Patiala in Punjab. Now, as you can see, they were all row houses. Okay, now when you have a row house, you don't have a front yard or a backyard. It's all very sort of tight, right? But you also want to make sure that the rooms which are inside also get some level of light and ventilation. So what we did was that because there was no room for the kids to play, we created multiple terraces because Punjab mein chhat ka pura concept hota hai, right? Sab chhat pe sote hain, gehu aage wo karte hain, you know, a lot of things. So it was very cool. So we created these multiple sort of layers. So each unit has a volume, right? So the living room over here has like a massive volume, but this is where the car park is. This was actually the grandmother's room. But then as you go on top, like, you know, there were other rooms also, but it literally became like a playground for the kids. So now, rather than missing out, you know, on having a garden for themselves, the terraces became the garden for them. And this is actually how it, you know, ended up being. We could document it later, but sectionally also it was very interesting inside. So we had like a lot of holes in the section. Now, here the challenge was, you are in Patra. Okay, I don't speak Punjabi. I can barely speak like my Hindi also sometimes gets very broken. Okay, and for that's me now. Don't hate me for that. Don't judge me. But basically the thing is that no one could make these walls. So finally, we learned a little bit of Punjabi. We got this ठेकेदार or a contractor in Punjab who actually made gurudwaras. Okay, because he could understand how to make a wall. And then that guy came and he did some jugaad, okay, and the word jugaad I learned over there, and then he helped us create this entire thing. So it was a very interesting exercise. Again, why I'm saying this is because tomorrow you will end up working with different people, right? And when you talk about entrepreneurship, entrepreneurship comes with a lot of challenges, right? And one of those challenges is working with different kinds of people with different temperaments, you know, and it could also be language or whatever. But I realized that design and drawing jab aap karte ho na, that's why, you know, when we say that movie and music breaks all barriers and there's no boundaries, I think the minute you start sketching something, सामने वाला उसके ऊपर कुछ sketch कर लेगा. And you are now not able to communicate through languages but through drawing. I think that's the beauty of, you know, this particular project. Very interestingly over here, we also designed these lights. Now we are calling, now these lights, again, you know, one thing that we try to do at News Lab and News Mart is that nothing that is designed is inspired from Pinterest or from AI or from any of these tools which are actually bastardizing the whole profession. Okay? So this particular light, we're calling it the reading light. Now when you say reading, it's like you read a book because it almost looks like a book. But read, when you write it as R-E-E-D, it also means like a reef, right? Like a cane when you read over, right? So it's a play on the word. So these lights were designed in 2019. Now we have a 2.0 version of these. It was very interesting. Then we converted the same light into like a suspended light, a wall light, you know, a floor lamp. And I mean, it's very cool because this actually also sort of turns. So this is, you know, so like I said, this is that News Mart where we do product furniture lights. So these are just some iterations of the same light. Like the one on the left is actually like a dining table. You know, so it's like literally these books which are in different directions. What's beautiful about this is the kind of reflection that it gives on the walls. So continuing with the property of light, this is where, you know, we designed what we're calling as the algal microforest. Okay, and this was for a light festival in Amsterdam where we participated. We didn't win it, but again it was very interesting because our entire proposal was to create these trees. Okay, and the trees were actually designed in a way where they basically are designed using algae. So the entire structure is an MS, which is again a cyclic material. And the foliage that you see, so each of these panels will become the foliage of the tree. Uske andar there are these test tubes, and the test tube has algae. Now why algae? So when you talk about algae, okay, it's really interesting. So this particular fact, the annual global carbon dioxide emissions were estimated at 36.4 million tons in 2019. Algae and mosses filter out approximately 14 billion tons of carbon dioxide per year. And algae is 400 times more efficient than trees covering the same footprint. So if you have a tree that's maybe 8 feet in diameter, that same amount of algae will actually absorb 400 times more carbon dioxide. So why we created this? Because cities, they're eroded, right? There are no trees over here. How do we give back? So we can create something which is almost like public infrastructure. So again, it's a product where you can sit under it, you know, there's safety. And the idea is that these, during the day, so algae thrives on sunlight. So there were solar panels on top of it, which basically takes on the light with built-in LED strips. So at night, these algae will then start glowing. And that itself becomes like, you know, like a public infrastructure. So it could be in parks, it could be wherever it is. So we kind of just patented this product and we're now going to take it ahead. Okay, very quickly, and I think I need to go fast. But basically, this particular project also very cool. So it is a swimming pool that we designed for a client. Okay, what you see on the left is their 8-year-old daughter's crayon sketch. Okay, we took this sketch, pixelated it, converted it into these tiles, which are the mosaic tiles, and then that was basically translated into the floor of the pool, right? And I think that, so inspiration can come from anywhere. How you translate it is left up to you. And that's where, like, it could be anything, it could be a dog or whatever, but what's beautiful about this is because this home is also for a husband, wife and their 2 daughters. And their entire life is around their 2 daughters. So which is why we decided to put it over here, because this is a courtyard and they always look down into it. So rather than the pool just being a boring blue pool, now becomes a work of art, but also a point of nostalgia. Then this is a market on wheels which we designed also during the lockdown. We won this as a design competition. It was an international design competition with 300 participants. This was a solution for vendors during the lockdown. Like you all know, okay, lockdown there was a lot of physical distancing. So we created this cart which basically completely sort of, like pulls out. And it was made in bamboo with solar panels, using all these interesting details over here. But the whole idea was that, the way the cart was being used is that people could actually stand at a certain social distance without interacting with the vendor. So, your produce and everything was done, and it had an inbuilt fridge, solar powered. So, once all these things come in, you can actually push the cart and move it around. And of course, this is also sort of an example of how, it could be in a marketplace and all. And this was given as a solution, as a global solution for anywhere in the world. Again, relevant to COVID. This over is actually a public toilet prototype, and here also the whole idea was, the context was in Dharavi, right? And what we did was that we actually created this proposal where you are using the solid waste that comes out from this toilet to create biochar. And biochar से हम bricks भी बना सकते हैं. So instead of the waste going into the Mithi river, right, or wherever it goes, or into the municipal mains, you are now using that to recycle and to create biochar. And that was this entire system, So of course there was focus on rainwater harvesting, urine treatment and recycling, and multiple other things. So a lot of study and everything also. Why I'm showing this project also because tomorrow you can give n number of solutions to n number of things, but anything that you're giving as a solution has to be backed by a lot of research. And that's what this project is all about. Just an image of this same toilet. Again, these toilets that we designed, public toilets, the problem क्या होता है ना कि there is no maintenance. I mean, all of us. I mean, but if you go to Japan to public toilet, like I can literally sleep on the floor. They're so clean. So why? Because the community is not involved in cleaning it. So the way we designed this public toilet also is called the Saja Samudaya Saujhalaya, where every person who's using the toilet is responsible for keeping it clean. So the toilet is open to men, women, kids, but also transgenders, right? So there is no distinction because that's another thing. I mean, everyone is humans over here. So at the end, design also needs to be sensitive to everyone. And in fact, so I was in Japan earlier this year, and I realized that over there, design is designed for keeping humans in mind, keeping life in mind. It could be animals, it could be birds or whatever it is. And I think that was an amazing learning. This is a school project that we've done in Bombay. It's basically, so the architecture was very robust. आपको पता है Bombay में, right? I mean, this campus also. You have a plot, you have setbacks, and you just got to go vertical. There is no other option, right? So there is no area of play, nothing. But what we then did was that we kind of changed it a little bit, and the internals were like, so this is at Chembur, it's basically the Kanakya Group School, RDK school. The interiors were like really playful and fun so that kids would actually have a lot of time engaging and interacting with these spaces. Similarly, we are now doing a school, rural school in Kathiawara, which is like really nice, massive school. Kathiawara is a very small town in Madhya Pradesh. From Baroda, it's like around 2 hours by road. And that's basically under construction right now. So we have been Kathiawara's first CBSE school for kids over there. Again, this is very interesting. So we designed a chair. Now, as you all know, and you know that every architect, okay, has designed a chair, right? Right from your Eames to Cork to John Rett and whatnot, right? What was our? So we are okay. We also want to design a chair. So this chair took us like almost, I would say, a good 1.5 years to get it exactly as per how we wanted. We started off with this prototype with a low back. We did that, but then we realized that the upper back was really not getting the support. Added the upper back, did that as an exercise, and then the next iteration was when we said that okay, let's also do some upholstery. So this chair has been at least tested by 15 different architects who have given us feedback. And we prototyped it, and now finally, we feel like it's a nice, comfortable, saveable chair. So it's all in solid wood and it's all straight. But then, these are also chairs that we have designed. So these chairs were actually inspired from the Muse tribe, right? So if you can see, this element right here, or basically the stacking, right? And that particular chair is actually a study chair that swivels. So this is a high back chair, which is called the totemic, and that's called the kingpin. So these are again furniture pieces that are inspired, by toys that we've designed. Number 30, this is a very interesting, very, very maximalist home in Kolhapur that we've done. और यहाँ पे भी क्या है ना, when you look at it, you'll be like, yeah, no two places are the same. But how this home was also designed, the way it was designed, is it came from the occupants, which of course all homes are about that. But we realized that in this particular home, it's a 22,000 square feet home, which is again very massive for 4 people. Husband, wife and 2 sons. Both the sons are studying. The husband is a businessman constantly traveling, and the wife is at home most of the time by herself. So the reason we designed this home the way it is, is because when I am alone at home, I should not feel alone at home. So there is enough sensory experiences that I'm constantly feeling like I'm communicating with, with either the staircase. So the staircase hand railing is also designed in a way where you could actually, throw a ball from top and it can come down, So this part of it is almost like a pinwheel, Then even over here, these panels over here that you see, they actually rotate, like all these panels, they rotate. So there is a lot of interactive, elements within the space, and that's how, it became like this really sort of cool, massive project. And this is the installation that we did for Law Collaborative. You guys know the Miloners Association? Yeah? So what we did was that the toys that we designed during the lockdown were then used as a screen or a veil for the Miloners Association staircase. And why we did that also is because see, when you go to Miloners Association, everyone always talks about the ramp. But that poor staircase, gets taken for advantage. I mean, no one gives it like any power. So we're like, okay, and the void is actually a very, very beautiful architectural element. I mean, for Prop to do that at that point in time, to cantilever it, no one really sort of did it. But now, when we sort of accentuated that void with the screen, people started noticing it a lot more. People started noticing the structure. So sometimes even a temporary installation like this, had actually like revived the intent of the architect, which was probably lost, right? So these are just some images, of that installation and how we installed it, etc. But what was really cool is that after the installation was done, and normally this is what happens, any installation that we go to, everything gets disassembled और उसको कहाँ पे डालते हैं? Bondi के hill पे, right? It goes to the landfill. What we did was that the entire thing that was disassembled, of course the only waste was the fish fires, but the toys were then distributed to all the schools in Ahmedabad, where we worked with Teach for India, and we donated the toys to the kids. And I think that was a very fulfilling exercise for us also, because not only did we supported Channapatna artisans, generated a source of income for them, created an installation which is contextual, but then distributed the toys also to the kids. And this is what design is all about. So for me, this is my most favorite project as a designer, as an individual, because I think that it also, struck that chord with, okay, I'm going to quote Salman Khan, being human in some way. Now, this is a very interesting project we done in Goa. Okay, I'm just going to quickly take it through. So why I'm showing these two now, because you can be as boring as an architect, and this is also done by us only, by the way. Okay, where we literally like taken Portuguese architecture and we created like a very cake-like version of it, which I'm not very proud of. But at the same time, what you see over here is something that I'm very proud of, because we've taken inspiration and